Well, hey everyone, and welcome to the next video in the character select tutorial series. In the last video, we went ahead and actually set up our character UI. So we have our entire canvas here. We have the panel, which is this entire black box. We have our sprite box, which is the image where our sprite's going to be for the current viewed character. Our left and right buttons to toggle through which character to look at, and then we have our select button, which will select which one we choose. And you have your level text, name text, and descriptions text to actually display what we want them to display. So what we're going to do now is we're going to tie all of it, and then we drug everything into here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and tie everything together. So go ahead in Visual Studio, and we're going to get started. Okay, so first thing what we're going to want to do is come down here, and we're going to want our start function back. So we'll do private void start, and we're going to do this dot character index set to 0, because we want to start off viewing the very first one. What we want to do is now we're going to want to create a function for changing this index when we click the left and right button. So we'll do public void left button like this, public void left button. We'll do left button click. Already got a left button, so we'll do left button click, and then we'll call it, and we'll do character index minus equal 1. We just want to move one left index in the list. And then the right button, correct, you guessed it, we can copy this, paste it, call it right button click, and then the index goes +1. We're going to move a 1 in the list. Okay. Well, cool. So that means that's just going to change the numbers whenever we do that. Well, that's awesome. Well, we want to actually display the information. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a private function here called void update character display info. Like this. So what we're going to do here is where we're going to call this function is inside of this property right here. This dot update character display info. Because whenever we set the character index, we want to say, okay, set the value to whatever it is. If it's less than 0, wrap it back around to where it's at the last element in the list. If it's greater than the last element in the list, just wrap it back to the first element in the list, the first 0. And then once we change the index, we gotta find it in the list. Well, so now that we have the correct index, we're going to display the info. How do we display it? We have to go to that index in the list. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to check to see if this dot current index less than 0. Okay. If for some reason the checks didn't pass, what we want to do is less than 0 or this dot current index greater than this dot characters count -1. We're just going to return. What we're doing here is we're saying, hey, if the character index is less than 0, that means it's not going to be found in the list. If it's greater than the character count, that means it's going to overflow the stack. That number is bigger than the actual index that we're looking for in the list. So we want to return so it doesn't give any errors and break anything. So once we know it's within range, we'll go ahead and do a character instance called current character, which is just the character we want to view. And we're going to do this dot characters at the index we want to do in the characters list. We want to go to this index in the list and return that character. Okay, so now we have the character in the list. Now we need to update the data in the UI with this character's data. How do we do that? We do character level. We go to this dot character level is set the current character dot level. So the character level is going to be a text. To access the string value, you got to do the text. This is the actual text that's displayed on the screen. You got to go, its text property is set to level. Level is a number, so you want to turn it to a string. There's a toString function that'll turn it to the string representation like this. So this dot current level dot text is set to the current levels dot string. This dot character name, this dot character name and we'll look for character name dot text is set to current character dot name, and it's a string, so it's just going to work. And then you want to do the same thing for description dot text is set to current character. Oh, that's not right. Current character dot description. And then you want to do this dot character sprite dot sprite, because it's an image. You got to access the sprite of the image. Is set to current character dot sprite. So, and to test to make sure that this works, what we're going to do is we got our button click set up and we got to update the data, and it'll display the data every time we click a button, which calls it here. So what we're going to do is we'll save it back into Unity. All the buttons and everything are set up. What we're going to do now is we got to tell the buttons what to do when we click them. So left button, find this on click, click the plus, drag your character select into here, and click the no function button, hover over character select, and then click left button click. What this does is it says, hey, give me the object that's going to be holding the script that you want to be able to use. So the character select object has the character select script on it. So when you drag that object into there and you click this little button, it looks to say, oh, it's got a character select script. And inside there, it's got a public function. That's what we want to use. So for the right button, we're going to come into here. We're going to do the same thing. But you guessed it, we're going to use the right button click function. So there you go. And that's all the ones that we set up for now. So if we click play on start, it should load the first one in this list, which the first one in the list is the male. So the male should load his level, name, and description, which is Bob, my name is Bob, I'm a human, Bob, level 1. All that should load here. And there you go. So there's Bob, he's level 1, his name's Bob, my name is Bob, I'm a human. You can adjust this to where it scales appropriately and things like that. And then if you click right, look at that. Bonnie's level 1, her name's Bonnie, she's a human. So if you click right from number 2, it should wrap to the first one. It does. I'm at the first one. If I left click, I should go back right. And I do. So the buttons click back and forth between the different users that you have in the list. The select button doesn't do anything yet, but what it's supposed to do, and what we're going to do, is when we click that button, it'll load a new scene as if you're going to your new game scene, and you want this character to be instantiated in your new scene. Like, this is the character you chose. So that's what we're going to do. So for now, we got everything set up here, and that's awesome. So what we'll do first is verify. So what we'll do now is we're going to go and create another. You notice in the character select right here, there's one that says selected character. we're going to come into here and create a character. And we're going to call it selected character. You can call it whatever you want. I'm calling it this because this specific scriptable object is going to strictly be here inside of your project. Anytime you come up to this home screen, this character select screen, this is how your data is going to be persisted between each scene. So what's going to happen is under character select, I'm going to grab this data and bring it in here. This data is only going, it can be modified here if you want, but we don't want that. We're going to want it modified whenever we click the select button. So what's going to happen is we're going to come into here. Okay, start left button, right click. We're going to come in here, we're going to put a button. We're going to call it public. Well, we're going to put a function, select button link. And what we're going to do is we're going to create an instance of a character, current character, set to characters. It's going to be set to this dot characters current character index. So the current character that's being viewed, and you can see it's the stats and you can see the descriptions and all the data and stuff. We want to get that variable. We're going to come here and we're going to say selected character, the character that we dragged into the hierarchy. I want to initialize you with the data from this character. So we'll do current character level this dot level. And then we want the name. So we'll do that dot name. And then we want that dot description. Then we'll do that dot sprite. So this is going to take the data we chose and save it into this scriptable object. And the way you can verify that is we'll come over here. We got the select button. Come over here. Let it load. Compile. And we'll click on the select button. Scroll down. Same thing as before. Character select. Bring it in here. We're going to choose the select button click. This. So now when we click play, what should happen is, if you look over here in the hierarchy, we have the selected character. Right? And the selected character, once it loads, you look at selected character, there's nothing there. We'll actually set his level to 0. He has no name, no description, he doesn't exist. It's just an empty scriptable object. What we're going to do is, let's choose Bonnie and click select. All of this data should populate with her data. And it did. Now when I click play to end the scene, notice how the data still saves. It does that because whenever you're in the edit mode, you're using the editor like this, it's going to save the data whenever you put a data into scriptable objects. That's how it is. Now, if this was at runtime, you actually built this game out and gave it to someone, what's going to happen is it's going to do the same thing, but when the application is over, when they hit close, I'm done playing this game, this scriptable object will be completely the way it was before any data was put into it. Because with a scriptable object, that data does not persist after runtime. When you build out an application, it only persists between scenes. So the reason we're doing this is because when you click this player, I'm going to save the data in here. I'm going to load a new scene. I'm going to go into this scriptable object, grab its data, and instantiate Bonnie into the scene as my playable character. That's why we're using this to be useful, because this is a way for us to save data between scenes. So we're going to use this to save the data between scenes. The only way you can save the data outside of the game is if you were to put write functionality to save data and load data. You can save the data to a file and then put a load functionality in there to where when you load the game, it'll load that data into this scriptable object, and then you can use it throughout the rest of the game because you're not going to be using your character select screen. So this will be the data you'd want to use. You would load data from a file into your save data, or if you want to start over, you just start over and it's going to put this as your selected character. So that's what we're going to do with that. Okay, so we have that all loading. What we need to do now is we need to load a new scene. So what we're going to do is we'll go into scenes. We're going to create a new scene. And we'll call it, level 1. Like the starting level. We can save this scene as good. And then we'll double click this. So we'll come into here. What we need to do is we'll create an empty game object. So when this scene loads, we'll have an empty game object. And we'll call it, game controller. Because whenever you create a game, I like to use a naming convention like this because this is going to be where a lot of the control functionality for the game is made. So the whole purpose of this is like this game controller is going to hold a reference to the player we need to instantiate in the scene. So we'll do that. And then we'll create a new script. And we're going to call it game controller. Okay. And now that we have this game controller, we're going to go and attach it to this. Okay, and then we'll go and add a game controller to it. The game controller doesn't do anything right now. But what we're going to do, this game controller is going to actually hold reference. Wait for it to load. There we go. Well, it's going to actually hold a reference to where we can do public game object character prefab. So we're going to come into the scene. Okay. Not going to do anything just yet. Wait for it to compile. Save it. Okay. Come in here, create a new game object. This will be, we'll call it character prefab. We'll reset that position. So here we have a character prefab, right? It needs a sprite renderer. And that's all we want to do with it. I just want this to be an empty game object that has a sprite renderer. You want to know how I know? Because if we were to take this town lady and bring her into the scene, you know what she would be? Literally an empty game object with a sprite renderer, and that's it. It's literally the same as this. So what I'm doing is I'm going to create a generic prefab with a sprite renderer on it. And we're going to drag it into here. So it'll be like a prefab. Then we can put all of these into separate folders towards the end. For now, just to get things points across. So here we have this character prefab, right? There you go. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into this game controller. We can delete this character prefab from the scene. We don't need it. We're going to take this, we're going to give it assets the character prefab. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the game controller. And we're going to change the start function to awake. Because we only want it to instantiate it one time when it comes into this level. Not every time this level loads, it's going to start. We want it to only do awake. So what we're going to do is we're going to do game object. Go is set to instantiate. And then we're going to instantiate the character prefab. Okay, you can choose wherever you want to instantiate it, positions and rotations and things like that. But for now, we're going to do this to where the instantiate object will be instantiated into the scene, and that's what we want to do. Well, essentially what we want to do is we want to set its sprite. I know a lot of people, what they'll do is, because we're going to have like a character controller, so we'll come into here and we'll create script and we'll call it character component. It's like the visual container. So what we'll do is this character component here, we will attach it to our prefab. So we'll open our prefab up. And we want to give it the component. Character component. Because that's what it is. What's our character component going to have? We'll open it up. And what it's going to have is it's going to hold reference to its character data. Like, it's going to hold reference. This is the visual container for the character itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to come into here, go over here, this character prefab. Have its selection data, correct. This is the character data that was selected. So what we're going to do is come into the character prefab, and we're going to give it the character data of selected character, because this is the character we're going to do. So the male and female aren't going to be altered. They're literally just used on that one screen, so you can choose who you want to play as. This selected character is the one that's going to always change, because it's going to update with who you chose. So selected the character is going to come into here. So this character prefab will always have this. And then what we'll want to do is, on awake, let's see, inside the game controller class, whenever we instantiate the game object, there's two ways you can do it. You can leave it as such. You can go into here, because the game controller, you want to do the assigning. So what we'll do is go.getComponent. It has a sprite renderer on it. So we'll do sprite renderer dot sprite. We want to set its sprite to the game object getComponent character component dot character data dot sprite. So what this is going to do is, whenever this scene starts, when it awakes, it's going to instantiate an instance of the character prefab and give it that data we chose. So I want to show you something really neat. So we'll let that compile. Okay, character prefab. What we're going to do is select the character is nothing. It's going to instantiate. That character is going to exist, but see, it's here, but it has no sprite. You can't see it. However, if we go and into selected character and we just give it a sprite, we'll say male, and we hit play, it's going to display the man. See? So a way you can test this without actually loading the scene just yet is to do this. So we got it set there. We can go back to open, double click this, scene 1, double click. If you go into here, and let's look at what happens with selected character. There's nothing there. Let's go into here and we'll choose Bonnie. This is a way of testing it. So we'll test it. We'll choose Bonnie. We'll select. Bonnie's been saved. We'll close it. Let's open up the other scene and then hit play. Bonnie should pop up. See? And this is a great way to be able to test it before you actually go into releasing it. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and erase it. Okay, we'll do this. And what we're going to do is So we got levels, we got scene 1. Okay, cool. So that's going to be there. What we're going to do is we're going to go to build settings. And scenes in build, we're going to add let's open up sample scene first. Come into here, we'll go to build settings. Set the build setting, add open scene. What that's about. We'll add the open scene. And then we'll go to level 1. Add the open scene. Bam. So what we're going to do, so that's 0 and that's 1. So if you're loading from the character select screen and you know the character select screen, you're starting from a new game, you're always going to be going to the next level first. So then we'll just do, level 1. So all these are in the scenes. So what we can do now, we'll go back to our regular scene, double click it. Okay. So now we need to add the functionality to our select button. Oh, and another thing I wanted to show you was if you don't feel comfortable having all of this inside of here, you could go into into the character component, and instead of on start, which is going to get called, no, you could do that if you want. You would go into here. You can do this dot get component sprite renderer dot sprite. Get component sprite renderer. Dot sprite. Yeah. Set. You can just set it here if you want. You can do set character data dot sprite. But you can set it here too if you want. So like you can actually test it. You can do that and then take this code out if you don't want it there. That's up to you. Then we can save it. So to verify. So we'll go over here to game controller. Oh, clicked out of it. Good. Back. Okay. We'll let that load. And then we'll go to so we gotta open up game controller. Nope, it's character select. Open up this. And then what we're going to do is on the select button, we got to load the scene here. If I'm not mistaken, it's scene manager. I believe. Yes. Scene manager. Dot. Can do load scene. And this is where it's going to get tricky. Is the build index. So basically, you want to load the very first scene. If you look at the build index, it was 1, so you can just do 1. We know we want to load scene 1, which is level 1. So what's going to happen here is we're going to click select. It's going to grab the character, set the data inside that selected character scriptable object. We're going to load the scene. When the scene loads, because we have the data already set in that scene, it's just going to work. And then we'll do select character here. So you notice there's nothing there. Come into here. We're going to bring our boy Bob into the next scene. Bam. And there's Bob. There's your character prefab clone. We got Bob. He's got his character data. We got the game controller. All is well. And that is one way you can do the character selection. And as I said before, you can see now it kept it. So you can take it out. If you end up later on wanting to say, you know what, I want to add a third character, pop in the sprites. Set the sprites. Come into here. Create a new character object, and then just fill in the data and give it the sprite, and that's it. And then don't forget to drag it into here though. You gotta drag it into your characters list, and that's it. That's all you have to do to add a new character to this game if you wanted to. It's very simple. So I hope all of you enjoyed this. I enjoy making this tutorial. It's always fun making things like this and coding out game concepts and Hope all of you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, just let me know. Anything else, y'all let me know. Y'all have a blessed day and y'all stay safe out there. Later.